the rod in Pickle, or an answer to the appeal of Church is letters written to the managers of the Banbury meeting house, begging them not to let the cause of his dismissal be known in London, by the Rev. T. Lutham, minister of the Gospel.
The nearer to church, the farther from God.
English proverbs. There is something so ungenerous in assailing a fallen foe, something so outrageous to humanity, that nothing but an imperative and paramount sense of duty to the public could induce the publishers of the following details to notice the content.
An appeal to the candid public.
By Church. Unfortunately for him, unfortunately for the practice he has espoused, his own account is sufficient to condemn him, so that it might justly be said of him,
Out of thine own mouth I judge thee, thou worker of iniquity.
What, indeed, do his exculpations mean? Everywhere he intimates his proneness to the hateful and unpardonable sin of backsliding. But still he backsides in his sleep. Unknowing transgressor, what would society say of that female who, acknowledging that she had been seduced, should pretend that her seduction was effected in her sleep? Professors like Church are the bane of Christianity. They are tares among the wheat. Jesus may be in their mouths, penitence and pardon their prayers, but their practice is that of Satan. The Reverend John Church is pleased to charge the present publishers with
The revival of old tales, printed about 5 years ago.
And, really, it is much to be apprehended that
The rod and Pickle,
now presented to the religious world, will refresh his memory not most agreeably as to circumstances which he himself would willingly have buried in the silence of the
willingly,
as he avows himself,
amenable to the laws.
We much doubt whether he would willingly have the details now published in due form, submitted to a jury of his countrymen. Some
2 false boys
might happen to make out a serious case against him, as one lad lately has. Whatever were the circumstances of Church's early life, they certainly are of small moment in this question. Did he not, after he coaxed them to become his bedfellows, at sundry times, continue,
suppose that he was in his own bed with his wife,
and behave to
boys,
as though he mistook them for his wife, uxorious gentlemen? If, however, the Reverend John Church could not travel without
better half,
why was not the poor woman his helpmate at every stage of his preaching life? Besides, in the absence of her, one should have thought, considering circumstances, that his attention would have been paid rather to females than to males. Nothing can be more disgusting to a well-constituted mind abating its sinfulness than the presumption with which the Reverend John Church relies on religion for his salvation. No one is to cast a stone at him, charged as he undeniably stands with transactions the most unnatural and foul charge and convicted. Still, forsooth, he and only he is a tenderness of mercy to be. And how, after all, does he get out of the Vere Street scrape? Simply by asserting that there are
10 lies.
In the paragraph which accuses him, it is scarcely worth his while to notice them, though those very lies had blasted his Would any plain honest man have endured such an imputation for half an hour? Even since the year 1808, at least, this miserable preacher has been detected of that sex-abusing crime for which language does not furnish an epithet. His sin has finally found him out. It would be impossible for him to escape the penalty tude. Anvere. The Reverend John Church has just denied that,
driven out from thence.
But what will he say now, when
The rod and Pickle
is twitching his hide and making him writhe at every stroke? Although, from feelings of pity and mingled shame, the congregation at Banbury
not pretend to charge Mr. Church with having actually, and in the full extent of the thing,
Anno 1808,
been guilty of the odious offence laid to his charge.
Yet,
from the whole tenor of his conduct, his letters, and various things that appear in evidence,
they declare they were then
constrained to believe that he had discovered a most detestable propensity that way,
adding that
Such was the abhorrence in which the crime he was accused of was held by the people in Banbury, that, was he to presume to return there, neither his person nor the meeting would be in safety.
Mr. Church will, try to overwhelm us with antinomian 5 bulls, as his faith, if not Lord, remove mountains, though it may raise, content to bear the entire weight of, conscious that we shall have fulfilled our duty, to man, doubtless, to woman we shall lie down content. We commiserate.
Poor human nature.
Quite as deeply as the Reverend Mr. Church, but then our pity is limited to naturals. Offences of another description, we confess we cannot consent to tolerate. This avowal may seem somewhat harsh to such persons as the Reverend John Church. We cannot help make
abuses of themselves.
Has the Reverend John Church forgotten what awaits such men? Authentic narrative of the cause of Mr. Church leaving Banbury in Oxfordshire by the Rev. T. Latham, minister of the Gospel. In the month of August, 1808, application was made to me by 2 ministers in London to supply the place of John Church at Banbury, without being informed of the reason of his so suddenly leave. As I was an entire stranger to Mr. Church and the people at Banbury, I had no reason to inquire or suppose that anything unpleasant had However, about the middle of the week after my first Sabbath there, Mr. Lambert, the acting deacon of the church, brought me a letter, directed to his care for me from Mr. Garrett, of Lant Street meeting, several in which he mentioned the steps Mr. Church was taking to get into Chapel Court meeting, to the injury of Mr. Niven, the minister of that place, and also to the prejudice of himself, Mr. Garrett. In this letter Mr. Barrett hinted at the cause of Mr. Church's leaving Banbury, and earnestly wished me to send him and Mr. Niven the particulars. After showing the letter to Mr. Lambert and Mr. Hall, I asked their counsel on the business, being a stranger to the whole affair, who advised me to take the letter to some of the principal persons of the meeting. Accordingly I went with them to Mr. Shea, Gardner, and others, to whom Mr. Garrett's letter was shown, when it appeared that several letters of inquiry had been sent them from different persons in London, but they from delicacy had declined giving any answer. However, they now determined that a meeting should be held of the principal persons belonging to the congregation. I did not attend that meeting, however. The day following, I was informed that they had concluded to draw up an impartial statement of the whole matter, and send it with copies of all the letters that had passed between them and Mr. Church. I was requested to transcribe a correct copy of the whole, which I did, and from that copy the following extracts were impartially made. It appears that Mr. Church, while at Banbury, popular as a preaching at many places round the neighbourhood, and was always well received among other places he shall have and teaching at Kingham, at which play they seldomly aiding at many mark the peoples. He had made an engagement to go to Birmingham, but a few days before he set off for that place, Mr. T. Gardner also received a letter from a gentleman at Kingham, at whose house Mr. Church was usually entertained, directed for Mr. Church, requesting that it should be delivered into his own house, no other Mr. T. Gardner accordingly waited on him, and put it into his hand. On opening it he changed countenance. On reading further he became quite confused, and appeared very much agitated and alarmed, but endeavoured to conceal it as much as possible. Mr. Gardner, perceiving this, requested an explanation. This he obtained by Church showing him the contents of the letter. This letter, it seems, reprimanded his indelicate conduct towards 2 boys in the family, the gentleman's son and a servant boy, who had both, at his request, been his bedfellows in their turns, and finally it forbid his coming to preach at Kingham again. Mr. Gardner, thunderstruck at this, entreated him to go directly to Kingham and clear up the point, which Church said had no foundation but in a falsehood and malice of the boy, and that Church declined going, alleging that it was of little consequence what 2 false boys would say, at his going to Kingham would derange his plan of going to Birmingham, and that by the time he returned the rumour in done. Mr. Gardner thought otherwise, and used every argument to prevail on him to go, offering to accompany him with other friends to clear him, if possible, before the report got farther abroad. However, he refused going with his friend from it court till the business himself would do, but this he did not do, but took his journey to Birmingham, leaving all in the greatest confusion among his friends at Kingham and The report quickly spread, and such was the popular indignation, that it was found necessary to keep the meeting-house shut up, as both it and the persons who had attended it were in danger, from the insults of the enraged people of the town. The people were hooted and shouted at in the streets, and branded with the opprobrious name of SMS. The same was written upon the doors, walls, and window shutters of the place of worship, and fears were entertained that the chapel would have been burnt or pulled. J&T Gardner now went over to Kingham to investigate the whole affair, the particulars of which were as follows. It appeared that whenever Church had occasion to sleep from home he always wished to have a man or boy to sleep with him. At Kingham he sometimes slept with the son of a gentleman, who always made him welcome to his house when at that place, whom he used to clasp round the neck after preaching, and say to him,
"Come now, you must be my bed fellow tonight."
But the son at length refusing to be his bedfellow, he had the servant boy in his place, for as yet nothing was suspected. At length both of them refused sleeping with Mr. Church, and when the reason was demanded, the son said,
"I don't like to deep with Mr. Church because he always on me in bed."
The boy said,
"I don't like sleeping with Mr. Church because he me so much."
From this rustic and simple statement of the boys the inference was easily drawn, and as the boys at every examination told the same tale, both when examined by the gentlemen of the house, by Messrs. Ardners, and also from Mr. Church's refusing to go to Kingham, and from many things that now came out in different quarters, as well as from many things in Mr. Church's letter, no doubt remained but that he had acted imprudently and indelicately, to speak in no more glaring terms, and the people at Banbury thought they were fully justified in disowning him for their minister, and all the neighbourhood was of the same opinion. It was now called to mind at other places where Mr. Church was in the habit of sleeping, though some of them were so distant from home, but that he might have returned with ease after preaching, that he has invariably wanted a bedfellow, and it is affirmed that he has gone to seek for a farmer's boy, or any one he had and apologized for bringing in a bedfellow, by saying he was apt to be troubled with the lowness of spirits in a night after the fatigue of walking and preaching, that he always driven bedfellow for company, and then he was also in the habit of taking a person of very low character with him from Banbury in his bedfellow. This person to Portobello, people were at a loss for the cause of such However, when the reports began to spread, this person was missing from Banbury, and was not heard of all the time I was there, which was looked upon as a circumstance that indicated nothing very favourable to Mr. Church. Another thing which was also interpreted in an unfavourable light was, that Mr. Church had made companions of several buckish young men in Banbury, and had frequently amused himself with seeing them naked, washing in a river or pond, and that he had been in their company at very unseasonable hours at night. There was also a young man, a hairdresser, apprenticed to Mr. Hall, who attended Church to dress and shave him, and when he was about this business, Church used to take many indecent liberties with. The young man was much disgusted, but did not expose him till other things came out. I was also informed by James Hall, Grisser, a young man of serious principles, and who was in connection with Mr. Wesley Steeple, that being at a public association, at Warwick, if I recollect the place right, that having to stay all night, Mr. Church was very importunate with him to take a part of the bed which he had engaged, and would hardly admit of a denial, and when Mr. Hall positively refused to be his bedfellow, Mr. Church appeared quite offended at his refusal. Messrs. T. and J. Gardner returned from inquiring into the affair at Kingham, and had reported the testimony of the boys and others to the people at Banbury. It was concluded to write to Church at Birmingham, and inform him of the result of their inquiries, and to let him know they disowned him as their minister, desiring him at the same time not to return to Banbury on any account. The letter he sent in answer to theirs was made up of concessions and apologies, self-criminations and excuses, half-confessions, evasive retractions of those confessions, and evidently showed his mind while writing it to be much agitated. Some of his own words are,
"I have done foolishly, I have acted most imprudently, oh! How I have wounded the dear cause of God at Banbury, oh! It breaks my very heart to think how I have given the enemies of the blessed gospel cause to blaspheme on my account, oh! How I have abused the kindness of the best of friends, oh! If it be possible, Don't let the cause be known of my being absent from Banbury. You may say I am gone on a journey, and you will speak the truth, but, oh, my dear friends, I must return to you again. I cannot think of parting with you. Do say that I may return. I must. Indeed I must. Or I shall die with grief.
Elsewhere he says,
The boys tell a simple plain story, and you do right to believe them in what they say, and I own that I have been too imprudent, but am not conscious of having done the actual crime. If anything of that nature has been of which they speak, it must have been without my knowledge, when I was asleep, and supposing I was in my own bed with my wife, but I know of no criminal intention or act except in this way.
The letter runs all in this strain, with frequent petitions to be committed to return, and almost insisting on that being granted. To this he had an answer sent from the principals of the congregation, in which, after treating the subject in a suitable manner, they tell,
You must not by any means or on any account whatever think of returning to Banbury, for we assure you that such is the abhorrence in which the crime you are accused of is held by the people in Banbury, that were you to presume to come, neither your person nor the meeting would be in safety.
After this a letter was received from Mr. Burton of Warwick, stating that he had at last prevailed upon Church to accompany him to Kingham, and that he had examined the boys before Church, who told the same story as before, when all that he offered as an excuse was,
It was possible for such things to have happened when he was asleep.
and that Church appeared to him deeply sensible of and humble for his imprudent conduct. What Church wished to be understood by imprudent conduct was this: that is afflicted with a rupture, and grants that he had asked his bedfellows either to look at or feel the difference of the rupture at night after preaching and in the morning after a night's. About the same time that Mr. Burton wrote to Banbury, as mentioned above, Church also wrote. In this letter he acknowledges that the boys kept to their story in his presence, but excuses himself as before that what passed was when he was asleep, and that the boys owned to him that they neither of them spoke a word to him at the time those things happened. He also owns that he had been carried too much away with the vain desire of popularity, and lifted up with pride by the caresses of the people, and that the Lord had suffered this trial to befoul him, to humble him and empty him of self, that he now saw and lamented his folly. He acknowledges that he had been too gay and trifling, and too fond of young, light, and trifling company, with a great deal more self-crimination. Then he proceeds to draw up a long set of rules for his future conduct, and promises, if restored to Banbury, to forsake the company of the young, and associate with the aged and grave, to revere their counsel and advice, to receive kindly their seasonable admonitions and rebukes, to give up the pursuit of popularity, to be content at home among his own people, to abandon all village preaching, and never again to sleep out of his own bed, nor away from his wife, and, in short, to change his conduct all. He also tells them how much he feels interested in their welfare, and proposes to send them a supply for a season, but begs them, for God's sake, not to let the real cause of his expulsion be made. In concluding, he hopes that his confessions, promises of amendment, and professions of repentance will, at length, restore him to The last letter Mr. Church wrote to Banbury from Birmingham was to arrange some matters about his family following him up to London, and appears to have been written in great hurry and confusion. I have made but one extract from that, which is as follows. He says to Mr. T. Gardiner, to whom he wrote,
They have been, alluding, I suppose, to some persons from Kingham, having been at Warwick and brought their accounts hither, and have set all the people in such confusion about me, so that a dear friend of mine, who was apprehensive for my personal safety, set off from thence, late as it was, and arrived here Birmingham at a very late hour, and his coming has thrown the whole family where I am into such confusion and disorder, that it was judged prudent for me to leave the town immediately, which I shall do accordingly, without delay. Look after my wife and the dear children, send her out by the first coach to London. She knows where to find me in town.
I shall now give some account of the proceedings of the people at Banbury, as to drawing up the statement to be sent up to London, a reason why it was kept back, after it was drawn up and written out by me, at the request of the people. In the first place, every letter was copied verbatim, in the regular order in which they had passed between Mr. Church and them. To these was annexed a preliminary address, in the name of the principals of the congregation. The particulars already mentioned were stated, the various charges alleged, and then the conclusion they drew from the whole, which was couched in the following
We do not pretend to charge Mr. Church with having actually, and in the full extent of the thing, been guilty of the odious offence laid to his charge, but from the whole tenor of his conduct, his letters, and the various things that appear in evidence, we are constrained to believe that he has discovered a most detestable propensity that way, and if what you receive in these documents are not sufficient proof to you of the same, if you choose to be at the expense of it, we can send you up a whole coachload of living witnesses to the same facts.
Thus far the business had proceeded. All the papers were drawn up in order, and it only remained for them to be properly signed by the parties who were principally concerned in the investigation, particularly by the deacons of the church. In order to this, they were read at a meeting of those parties, and generally no order. J and T, gardeners, actually and readily signed their names to them, but Mr. Lambert, the acting deacon, positively refused to give his signature, and will out it they could not be properly considered as the church's act. At this, the other parties were very much displeased, but could not prevail on Mr. Lambert by any means to sign his name. The reason he alleged for not doing it was this: Mr. Church was indebted to him £16 or £17, and he said that if those papers appeared in London against him, his friends there must all forsake him, and then he, Mr. Lambert, must lose his money, which he could not afford to do, and, therefore, until he had got that, he would sign nothing against him, though, when he had got his money, he did not care if Church was hanged. This much I heard Mr. Lambert assert. This caused a demur, and though the other parties all wished the papers to go, they could not without Mr. Lambert's name, for the reason mentioned above. After some deliberations and consultations, it was represented by some that they were likely to get into a deal of trouble if those papers were sent to London, that if Mr. Church was taken into custody, and had to undergo an examination, that they should have to attend as witnesses, and as they could not foresee all the inconveniences that might ensue both to themselves and also to Church, and, as they had now done with him as their minister, they finally agreed to suppress the papers, and leave him to get on in London in the best manner. After my engagement at Banbury was fulfilled, I returned home, but when arrived in London, before the coach reached the inn at which it was to stop, a person called to the coachman, and inquired for my name. The coachman stopped and asked if any passenger in the coach answered to that name. I answered, and was requested by the unknown person to accompany him to James's Street, Covent Garden, where the congregation and minister were waiting for me, and would not proceed until I arrive. This appeared singular to me, guessing the reason don't with him to the... As soon as I arrived the service went on, and at the close of the sermon, the preacher addressed the people, and, pointing to me, told them that I was just come up from Banbury, where I had been a month with the people that Mr. Church had left, and that from me they might have a true account of what had passed. Then he spoke to me.
Do, dear brother, stand up and tell the people what you know about this affair.
And, having last spoke, sat him down. All eyes were now on me, and I was obliged to rise and say something. I told the people I found myself awkwardly situated, just come from the coach, my thoughts uncollected on the subject, and an entire stranger both to them and Mr. Church, whom I had never seen. I wished to speak with caution, though I must confess that at Banbury there were reports in circulation very unfavourable to him, and proofs of his having acted with imprudence and indiscretion. I then mentioned what was said by the boys at Kingham, and to be excused from saying. The minister then made a very warm harangue to the people at some length, though the business terminated at that. The next evening I preached at a certain place in London, and after sermon the two deacons of the place requested me to attend them to Rehoboth Chapel, where I was again interrogated by Mr. White and another minister. I told them some particulars which they seemed to get over very well. They then showed me the letter, and asked me if I knew the handwriting, which I... Strange as it may appear, this letter was from a person who was present at the meeting at Banbury, before mentioned, in answer to one they had wrote to him, in which he exonerated Mr. Church from everything but little imprudence in getting into debt, say where to be we were husband and heads would give my kind loved. Some months after this, when Mr. Church was at Chapel Court meeting, I accepted of an invitation to take tea with Mr. Harper, proprietor of that meeting. Mr. Nervan went with me, upon Mr. Harper expressing a wish to be informed of every particular relative to the Banbury business, I said but little then, but observed that I should not have the least objection provided Mr. Church was present. This was agreed our eating with her history of Chapel Court. Here, for the first time, I saw Mr. Church. Mr. Love, Mr. Knive and Mr. Harper, Mr. Burbridge, and some others were present. Mr. Church and I were total strangers to each other, but in the presence of the meeting I stated every particular that I have written in these pages, and the parties present all listened to the account. When I had done, I asked Mr. Church if I had done him any wrong. He said he believed I had given a true statement. He also acknowledged the quotations from his letters to be correct. After this I heard him preach 2 evening lectures in Chapel Court, and spoke to him and Mr. Burbridge. This is all the acquaintance I ever had with. I thought proper to mention these things in the presence of Mr. Church, that all who read this now made public may be assured they have a correct account of nothing more than what Mr. Church has acknowledged correct before so many witnesses. And I considered it needful to state my very slight knowledge of him, because some persons account of my being so often called upon to speak about him have tried to make it out that I was an intimate acquaintance of, but I hope that is sufficiently proved to be a false representation. I have made no comment on any part of the subject, nor do I intend to make any. Every person must read and think for himself, and put that construction on the whole that appears most natural to. Some will, perhaps, say, why did you never make these things public before? I answer, because I did not till now see it proper. And others will say, why keep the secret so long, and now divulge it after all? I answer, such I kept it while I thought it right to do so, and make it public for the satisfaction of those who wish to know both the beginning and conclusion of the whole. T.L. Just published, price 2 shillings. The trial and conviction of John Church, a preacher of the Surrey Tabernacle, Borough Road, at the Surrey Assizes, at Croydon, on Saturday, the 16th of August, was 1817, for an assault with intent to commit an unnatural crime, taken in shorthand by a barrister. The profits arising from this publication will be given to the prosecutor to assist in defraying the expenses of the prosecution. London, printed and published by Hay and Turner, 11 Newcastle Street, Strand, and may be head of W. Wright, Marshate, Lambeth, and all booksellers in town and country. Also, just published, price 4d, entered at Stationers' Hall. Hay and Turner's genuine edition of The Infamous Life of John Church, the St. George's Fields preacher, from his infancy up to his trial and conviction, with his confession, sent in a letter to the Rev. Mr. L. 2 days after his attack on Adam Foreman at Vauxhall, with remarks on it, by the same gentleman, to which are added his love epistles to E.B., with various other letters, particularly one to Cook, of Vere Street notoriety. Printed and published by Hay and Turner, 11 Newcastle Street, Strand, and may be had of all books as. None are genuine but those published by Hay and Turner, they having the original letters in their possession. Hay and Turner, printers, Newcastle Street, Strand. I hope you enjoyed reading the book The Rod in Pickle, or An Answer to the Appeal of John Church, the Obelisk Preacher, with. If you liked this, please remember to like and subscribe. Please visit Dodonomy if you want to see different types of videos we produce. For statistics on our videos, visit at Dodonomy Core. Visit our story reading channel website at https://adonomy.com/adonomyproject/autonomous stories/ Happy YouTube travels.